guys, Giuseppe Gaezza here from silence+other Sounds. In this video I'm going to demonstrate you the sound shaping parameters in the sound design module of Maleventum. Maybe some of you already have seen the trailer and the full sound demonstration of Maleventum. For those of you that are new to the library, I'll quickly summarize what Maleventum is about. It's a Kontakt library composed of two different instruments, a one-shot sound effects sound design module, that is the one that I'm going to demonstrate now, and another MPE compatible playable module based on pads and textures. Maleventum is inspired to the wind instruments of the Nordic and Celtic tradition, so it's mostly about war horns, hand calls, and try to reproduce that kind of feeling. Currently we are running a deal for Maleventum of $39 or euros. That will be until October 31st. And I recommend you to have a look at the full sound demonstration in order to have a clear idea of what kind of sound you're going to find in Maleventum. It's a video of 50 minutes entirely based on sound, where you can both hear the sound effects from the sound design module and some very quick composition with the playable module, which once again is MPE compatible. So let's have a closer look at the sound design module, and I'm going to show you all the possibilities to create your own sounds and to shape the sound in a variety of ways. So if you already have purchased some of our previous libraries, in particular Zidor Guys and Pain Piano, this interface might be familiar to you. It's basically almost the same one that we have featured also in the previous libraries, with something a little bit different. The basic concept is the same, is to have a number of samples across the keyboard and give the possibility to individually manipulate the samples with the parameters that you see here on the interface, except at the convolution, which works as a master effect. So this means that volume, pitch, these buttons here, volume, envelope, and filters can be set individually for each one of the sample. For example, if I play this one, okay, here we have some LFO set on 16th and assigned to the low pass filter with a saw shape. If I play another sample, we see that this one has no LFO and also has a different shape. So you can set each one of these parameters individually for each sample, and the last sample that plays is highlighted in red on the virtual keyboard. So as I say, this is more to be meant as a sound design tool to sculpt each one of the sounds as you prefer and to combine them together to create your own sound. So the basic concept has been to create some individual sound effects that stand on their own, which have their own identity and then work almost immediately if you just drag and drop them in on the audio track of your DAW, or if you just play them as they are in the preset, but at the same time give the flexibility and the versatility to transform them in something different according with your creative flow. So I won't spend too much time about volume, envelope, and filters, which is pretty straightforward. For the volume envelope, we have attack, hold, decay, sustain, and release. Then we have a low pass filter and high pass filter, and a resonance that affects both the two filters. Then, as I said before, we have an LFO part where we can set both the rate of the LFO, that ranges from 64 to 8, and the amount of the LFO, once again individually for each sample. And we can set, if we want the LFO to, we can decide if we want to set the LFO to the low pass filter or to the high pass filter by using this switch here. Then we have the possibility to individually set the shape of the LFO, and same thing is also for volume and pitch. Well, in regard to the pitch, one interesting thing is how these samples are mapped on the virtual keyboard. Each sample is tuned to the root key that corresponds to that key on the virtual keyboard. That means if I play this sample, which is mapped on C0. If we listen, okay, C2 maybe it's better. Okay, it's the same root key as the sample. And if I play this other one, which is on G, okay. Also, if you change the pitch to whatever value you want, so I'll set it to a very random value, for example, you can restore the original pitch just by doing Control-click, so that you always have the possibility to restore the chromatical mapping of the samples along the keyboard. I think that this is a particularly useful feature because it saves you a lot of time just, you know, fiddling with the knobs, with mouse and click in order to get your pitch right. But nothing stops you to tune all of this sample to any other pitch and to change the pitch arbitrarily as you want. Another interesting feature that regard pitch is this one, global. If I click global, we see that the pitch knob changes a little bit. When global is activated, very basically, we have the possibility to tune all the samples simultaneously in the patch to the same root key. So if I have global activated and I have, for example, F, I'll get a little bit more detail about this one as well, then all the sample will be tuned to the root key F. Okay, and even if I change it to D, for example, okay. So I think that this is a very convenient feature because, especially in some genres of music, for example, some styles of trailer music which are purely based on sound design, let's say that the power of the track, rather than relying on a complex architecture of the arrangement in terms of melody or in terms of harmonization, whatever it is, it relies more on the use of the sound. So you can listen to some incredible tracks that are very powerful, which are basically composed of just one note, because the power of the track, the identity of the track relies more on the quality of the sound design rather than on the arrangement in a more conventional way. So I think that that could have been very useful to have these features to tune all the samples to the same root key and not caring about playing something out of tunes or doing some mistakes. Also, this can be very useful if you want to combine all the samples at once. If you want, for example, playing them, stack them on top of each other. Okay. In regard to this slider here that shows up when global is activated, this simply shifts all the samples from -2 octaves to +2 octaves. So if I put it to -1, so, probably most of you are into sound design, and you know that when you start to down pitch samples, a lot of interesting things happen. And I encourage you to experiment a lot with this feature to tune all the sample on the same root key and then go down of 1 or 2 octaves, play with the LFOs, and you can easily turn a horn sample in something like a texture or a bed. So this is like the founding concept behind this module here is to give some pretty straightforward controls that allow you to quickly manipulate the sample without too much focusing on the sound design minutiae, but going pretty straightforward and having a pretty quick result. Okay, let's turn off global and let's see this. Well, another thing is that when you deactivate global, this pitch is restored. Okay, so the instrument does not have memory of the settings that you do in global mode. When you deactivate it, it returns back as it was. Another interesting feature is this one that is called boost. Probably you have noticed that most of the sample start with this sort of booming impact sound. Okay. Okay, if you want to get rid of that, you just need to deactivate boost. And once again, you can decide to turn on or turn off the boost button individually for each one of the samples. You might have some which have this boost of the low frequency by adding this low end sound, and others that are not boosted, let's say. And the reason why we added this functionality is because a lot of these sounds that might resemble some famous braam sounds that are used a lot in trailers and in soundtracks, they acquire more power when there is a very present layer of low end. And so rather than messing with the equalizers, distortions, etc., I decided to give a quick way to give an immediate boost of the low end and make it more cinematic just by activating a button and putting another sound in background, and give the flexibility to the user to keep it or get rid of that. Okay. So just to summarize, everything that you see here can be set individually for each sample. So I strongly encourage you to play a lot with the parameters and come up with your own sounds. That's the reason, because for the sound design modules, I do not put too many presets, because I don't want people to stay lazy and to just use those, but to experiment and take advantage of something that is quite simple, but at the same time can give interesting and quick results. So let's pass to this other section that is called convolution. As I say, this is a master effect, so not something that you can set individually for each sample. So whatever you do here, it will affect equally all of the samples. Also in this case, we have used convolution for Zittergeist and for Pain Piano as well. So if you own those libraries, you might be familiar with the idea of convolution and the impulse responses that they are used in the previous releases. You know that convolution is mostly used as a reverberation technique, where the reverb of a physical actual environment is sampled and is sort of applied to the signal that you are using by using the convolution, which is a technique not just used for music, but is a signal processing technique. In this case, rather than capturing the reverberation of a real environments, we decided to use as impulse responses some completely experimental sample that have nothing to do with the reverb of actual locations. So if you just have a look at the menu here, where you have all the available impulse responses, they are basically design sounds. So hair burst, hover, ethereal splash, extreme liquid burst. So they come from found sounds which have been processed. So this, rather than a conventional master effects kind of thing, is a further tool to sculpt the sound and give you another degree of manipulation of the sound. Putting a conventional reverb would be quite useless in my opinion, because most of you will have plenty in your soundware of incredibly sounding reverb. So I think that if you want to have that kind of classic reverb, conventional reverb, you already have a lot of incredible instruments. So take the convolution here as a way to further shape your sound. So let's have a listen to what it's like. So let's select, for example, this one. Let's increase the amount of the effect. Yeah, I really like this one. So it kind of sounds like a reverb, but you can also hear that there is some sort of texture that is going on. Okay, so this is the idea. Not having a clean, polished reverb, but more a tool that allows you to add interesting textures to the original sound. So just a few words about how convolution works in Kontakt. You can control the pre-delay, the sides. Well, if the sample are not actual audio snapshots of a real environment, maybe size doesn't make that sense. So just take it just as a further parameter to play with to see how it is going to shape your sound. And then we have an high pass filter and a low pass filter that are applied to the impulse response, so to each one of these samples that are selected. These are very useful because when you work with convolution, it might happen that there are some frequencies that are over, let's say, emphasized. Okay, they might even distort, or they might just, pretty sound bad and unpleasant. So by using filters, this high pass filter and low pass filter, you can get rid of the frequencies that you don't like and just leave the sound, the part of the sound, let's say, of the spectrum that you like. But also in this case, I encourage you to experiment and be creative and see what happens if you play with these parameters. So I'm just putting some very random values, and I will set this one, Bialetti coffee, that for your own information is the coffee machine that is used here in Italy. And when the coffee is prepared, it emits this sort of interesting gargling white noise. Okay, and I thought to give it a try to experiment with the reverb. So I think that it sounds quite interesting. It's not bad. Okay. Well, one thing that I forgot to mention is that you will find 6 Kontakt instruments that are based on the sound design module. You have in this case war horns, hand calls, but I just select another one, maybe this one, hand signals. Okay, it's a lot of interesting sounds, I think, that are very reminiscent of the cinematic kind of vision of ancient worlds, Viking. It's a sort of cinematic genre per se, and so the idea has been to give to create some sounds that could sort of blend well with that kind of visual counterpart. So I think that's all. I think that I gave you a quite complete preview of all the sound shaping possibilities that you have in the sound design module in Maleventum. I'm going to release in the next days also a video where I go in detail about all the functionality of the playable pads instruments, which is a little bit more complex because besides the sound shaping part, there is an interesting mapping screen that you can either use to create MPE patches if you own an MPE controller, or just to map any other MIDI controller. You don't necessarily need to have an MP compatible one. You can still use it in a very intuitive and quick way. So once again, we are running this intro deal, 39 euros or dollars, plus 50% of any other Kontakt library if you add it to the order of Maleventum. I do recommend once again to have a look at the trailer and especially the total sound demonstration. 50 minutes with time marks, so you're not constrained to see it all. You can just jump across the section to have a quick look and make your mind about what Maleventum is going. I take this as an opportunity to thank all the wonderful people that purchased Maleventum, and I'm really glad that so far the feedback has been really positive. So a lot of work is going in this one because I had to do a lot of research in forgotten instruments. I was not able to find many of them, so I had to self-build them with PVC or with other techniques. I was fortunately assisted by other musicians and friends of mine who are way better than me at doing these kind of researches. But I mean, I'm pretty satisfied with the result, and I really hope that you will be as well. So see you next video.